Thanks, Bill. Rebecca. Did you know that the Nobel Peace Prize winning accord between Rabin and Arafat grew organically from a series of youth camps that brought together both Palestinian and Israeli kids from across the region? It was not their individual representative authority or government, nor was it any other international superpower that spurred that accord. Sure, the final photo op featured the nation leaders, but I'm talking about the spark. Those hard first and second steps. In fact, it was ordinary citizens with honest, neutral brokers looking for common ground. That was the source of a Nobel Prize winning peace accord. It was regular people like you and I, organized by honest brokers. Did you also know that similar non-governmental sparks have played a role in addressing major global conflicts across the world throughout history? Cyprus, Northern Ireland, the Falklands, Sri Lanka, and the list goes on. But the idea of an honest broker is not just an international and civil war. In any conflict, there are always multiple parties with multiple perspectives. Whether it is reviewing Alberta's K-12 curriculum among teachers, students, parents, scholars, and the public, whether it is looking at municipal charters among city employees, citizens of different sized cities, community organizations, or whether it is designing an Olympic bid, debating your kid's curfew, or trying to figure out who left the milk out. There are always problems in the world. There will always be problems in the world. Some are easy to solve. Those get solved easily. But some are hard to solve, and perhaps others even impossible. So while the easy problems are solving themselves, somebody needs to step up and tackle the tough ones. A citizen on her own cannot solve a tough societal problem. Cancer groups, cardiac foundations, youth and women-focused associations tackle these problems, but even these large, prestigious, potent nonprofits cannot always solve these problems alone. Scientists, researchers, educators, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, we publish and teach current evidence. We too serve on the front line, but we too are irrelevant if alone. The power to understand, to frame, to reframe big problems will not be achieved by one researcher, by one school, by one nonprofit, by one organization, or by one citizen. It takes us all. We each bring our own piece of the puzzle. To complete this puzzle, each piece must be adjacent to another piece with which it fits. Because to put together a puzzle, we need different pieces. Some interlock and some don't. But those that don't interlock in one spot certainly interlock in another. No piece is useless. And if we are all the exact same identical piece, then nothing can possibly be interlocking, and puzzles go unsolved. Value is lost. And when putting together a puzzle, it doesn't help to have Grandpa yelling from the armchair. It requires us to be in the weeds, pun intended, looking, feeling, testing, giving up, napping, but then returning and figuring it out. So my friends, you are here for a reason, to find your interlocking piece and to allow other pieces to find you. Not a whole puzzle will we complete today, but out of 1,000 pieces, if everyone finds one interlocking piece, we begin to see a part of the final picture, and that inspires. As we explore the conversation today, listen to those with whom you agree. Enjoy that warm, fuzzy feeling of vindication that we all get when you hear someone say something that you already believe. But most of all, listen even closer to those with whom you don't fully agree. There will obviously be people with whom you fully and completely disagree, and that's fine. They won't be your interlocking piece. But what I'm talking about is those with whom you partially agree or partially disagree, but with whom you don't completely disagree. When that person is talking, allow your mind to drift. Allow yourself to daydream, to consider what question, what piece of data, what circumstance might exist where you and they might see eye to eye. Today, I want you to look for your interlocking pieces. What I'm describing is citizen diplomacy. The beauty of citizen-led diplomacy is that it is untouched by government, not in conflict with government, but apart from government, enabled by government, encouraged by government, valued by government, But by being apart, it is lean, agile, and draws on the universal intellect and wisdom of the crowd. It doubles down that puzzles take time, risk, growth, evaluation, and iteration, and so cannot be dictated top-down. Government, of course, represents the people, so as we, the people, grow and evolve, so too can our representation. For informal diplomacy to succeed, we need the biggest tent, the most diverse crowds, and the greatest of effort to understand one another. Rebecca and Peter have done their part. They have brought together great diversity under one big tent, a very nice tent. But the understanding part is up to us now. Understanding is not something someone else does for you or to you. It is a bimodal process. It requires two people to both understand each other. If you want to be understood, you must first seek to understand the other. And remember, you do not need to agree to understand. I understand why my Edmonton friends think the Oilers will win the cup, but I don't need to agree. Why do we need to understand each other? It's because this is not about you or me. It's about us. It's about our city, about our province, about our country. You being here today is an act of citizenship, and we cannot take citizenship lightly. After recent global elections, it has also become readily apparent, how fragile civility can be, civility being the bedrock of citizenship. While this may all sound grandiose, it actually is quite grand when we look at the consequences of failed civility, of failed citizenship. Here today, or in any O'Brien Institute forum, we are Canadians first. We may be divided on an issue, but we are not divided as citizens. We are simply trying to tackle and solve a complex challenge, in this situation, a complex health policy challenge. But regardless of our perspective, we're all here to make our country healthier and happier. So today I want us to judge our effectiveness by asking one question 5 different times today. So ask ourselves this one question 5 different times today. Am I actively trying to understand? Am I actively trying to understand a speaker even if I don't fully agree? First up, to frame today's discussion, is Matt Hill. True from Matt's talk and all the other talks, you will have questions. Ask them. Questions are a great way to understand someone's perspective. You can write your questions on cue cards and someone will collect them. And I think I'm going to get a wave from people who are going to be collecting the cue cards in the back there. So if you write them on the cue card, someone will be collecting the cue cards and they'll pass them up to the front. If you are a doctor, get someone next to you to write the question so that it is legible. You can also tweet your questions at #CannabisYYC or email your questions to cannabisyyc@gmail.com. Matt is a scientist and professor at the Hotchkiss Brain Institute within the Cumming School of Medicine. He is a Canada Research Chair and studies the interplay between stress and the natural cannabinoids in the brain. He will introduce to us the cannabinoid system in an accessible and digestible way to a lay audience. Whether we are talking about the benefits or harms, ingestion or inhalation, functional impairment or improvement, much of what we know or don't know emanates from the basic science of how these active agents affect our brain, body, and behavior. And what I can promise you from having listened to Matt in previous talks is this will not be your standard basic boring science professor. He's great. I'll give you Professor Matt Hill.